Hello, today we're going to talk about adverbs of time. There are different types of adverbs, but we will focus on the time ones. There are three types of these adverbs. The first one tells us when an action happens. The next one tells us how long it happens for. And the third tells us how often the action happens. Take a look at these examples. Which category do you think they fall in? Do they tell us when an action happens, how long it happens for, or how often the action happens? Pause here for a minute and think about it before you move on. So in the when category, you should have found these adverbs. They typically are used at the end of a sentence or a clause. Under the how long category, you should have found these adverbs. They are also typically used at the end of a sentence or a clause. And in the how often category, these are the ones you should have found. These adverbs are also known as adverbs of frequency. You might have heard of that term. Let's look at these in a little more detail. So if we look at this time scale on the left of the screen, at 100% of the time, we have always. At 0% of the time, we have never. And somewhere in between, we've got sometimes. We fill in the gaps between always and sometimes. We have almost always, usually, generally, normally. They're all synonyms. They mean the same as typically. We then have very often and often. And further down the scale, we have not often, rarely, hardly ever, and almost never. These are the most common ones on this scale. We also have an adverb, ever. It means at any time in your life. There are some other adverbs of frequency as well. For example, once a week or weekly, twice a year, 3 times a day, every Sunday or on Sundays. They mean the same thing. Once a fortnight or fortnightly means the same as every 2 weeks. Daily, every other day or once in 2 days. Annually, once a year, yearly, at Christmas, on birthdays. There are so many more examples, and I'm sure you can come up with examples of your own. But where do we use these in a sentence? Well, the ones that are on the left of the screen and ever go after the verb to be or before the main verb. For example, he is always late. He always comes late. Is the verb to be, so always goes after it. Comes is the main verb, so always comes before it. You might have heard ever typically in the present perfect. Have you ever been to China, for example, at any time in your life? But the rest of them, the rest of the adverbs of frequency are most commonly used with the present simple. If we look at the adverbs on the right of the screen, these are used at the end of a sentence. They can be used at the beginning for emphasis. For example, he watches films twice a week. Twice a week, he watches films. We're just emphasizing how often if we use it at the beginning of the sentence. And usually, generally, normally, and sometimes can also be used at the beginning or the end of the sentence for emphasis. Thank you for watching.